Hey friends, this video has so much to cover. Let's see if we can get it in just about 10 minutes or under because your time is important. Chapter 8, we are going to Rome. This video will talk about all of the items covered here. And we'll start off with geography. We can compare Italy to Greece and we can see that there are some similarities, but there are also some major differences which will have huge historical implications. Greece was very mountainous. Italy is going to be a lot more fertile. So the Romans are going to do a lot more farming than the Greeks did. Greece was surrounded by the Aegean Sea. Italy will be flanked by the Tyrrhenian Sea to the west and the Adriatic Sea to the east, and additionally the Mediterranean Sea. The Greeks were a seafaring people. Of course, they're mowing the grass right now. I got to get this video done. The Greeks were a seafaring people. So too will the Romans be, but only after a certain war. And while the Greeks were like independent city states, polis, these were all like different countries, the Romans will unite a large group of people under one government. The first group of people that we think inhabited the Italian peninsula were known as the Etruscans. The Etruscans settled in Italy sometime around 900 BCE, we think, which is around the same time as the Dark Ages of Greece when Homer is writing the Iliad and the Odyssey. The Etruscans, we have a lot of their writing actually, but we can't read it because we don't know what much of it says. So this guy, Indiana Jones, is working hard to try to decipher and figure out what the Etruscans wrote down. We might be able to learn more of their history if we were able to decode what they wrote. And then we think that around 509 BCE, a revolt was staged against an unjust king whose name was Tarquinius Superbus, which I think is fun to say, in which the king was removed because he was unjust, and the Romans kind of took a page from the Greeks, said, hey, let's see if we can borrow this idea of a republic that you created. Athens is having its heyday, its dynasty, somewhere around 450 BCE. That'll be about the time that the Romans borrow the idea of a republic. But they also borrowed a lot more then, too. Also, again, I said probably and around, or we think a bunch of times because remember, history is made from sources. And if we don't have the sources, we can't know the story. We have some, but we don't have as many as we would like. So sometimes I have to use words like probably or maybe when talking about ancient history, too. The Roman gods and borrowed from the Etruscan gods and the Greek gods and then just switched their names. There was an alphabet borrowed by the Phoenicians and the Greeks, and the toga, perhaps most famously. We think of the toga with like, that's Roman. Actually, the Etruscans wore it before. And the textbook also notes that the Etruscans were some of the first people to use like implants for dental teeth, which I thought was kind of interesting. Please move the mower, sir. Greek thought is always going to spread across much of the world then too. So I put in bold right here the Romans. They were some of the first people to most prominently borrow a lot from the Greeks. This list is going to add, though, as we continue our study of history. When we talk about the Roman Republic, maybe an overall guiding question like, what's the best way to govern a large group of people? In the Roman Empire, you're going to have rules where literally millions of people are going to have to follow them. Well, what's the best way to govern a large group of people? Here's kind of what the Romans did. They had a republic, which was a form of government where citizens could vote, which brings us to a really important question. Who constituted citizens in Rome? As you can probably guess, everyone were not citizens. What about women? What about slaves? How has democracy improved over time? How has it declined over time? These are all interesting questions I think we should ask. A Senate was made up of 300 people who made laws, but only patricians, wealthy landowners, could make the laws in the Senate at first. This is a bit too simple of a comparison, but the Roman Senate here, these people are making laws. The House of Lords in the UK, these people are doing the same thing. They are attempting to make laws that will be enforced upon by a group of people. Plebeians, which is basically everybody else what the Romans called, they could not vote at first. This would change over time then too. In the Roman Republic, you had two consuls at the top, people who served 1 year terms who enforced the law and could veto laws if they choose. So a consul would be someone kind of like Boris Johnson right now, the prime minister, even though he's in a little bit of trouble and may not be prime minister by the time this video is done. But yeah, these people were like the presidents. They enforced the law. They could only serve 1 year terms, which will be an attempt to put a check on someone else's power. The Romans, during the Roman Republic, didn't want one person who could become too powerful, because that might be bad for everybody else then too. So this is a theme that will pop up in history. The Romans could appoint someone known as a dictator who would serve for 6 months. They had unlimited power. We'll talk about a famous dictator in just a second. These would be dictators would be appointed in times of emergency, so someone could solve the problem. And in Rome, they had a system where a group of people known as praetors served as judges. So I found this picture. Here's two people are having a disagreement, and they present their cases before a judge, and then the judge makes a ruling and says, no, you didn't steal his cow, you need to pay him 10 coins or something like that. So yeah, that's kind of what the Roman Republic looked at. We fast forward then to the Punic Wars. This is kind of like when Rome becomes an empire, one of the factors for it then too. So the Punic Wars occurred when the Italians, the Romans here, and the Carthaginians here in North Africa and Spain had a problem. Both claimed to have a monopoly of trade in the Mediterranean Sea. So the Romans are saying one thing, the Carthaginians are saying another, and then war erupts between the two in 264 BC. They both wanted exclusive trade rights in the Mediterranean Sea. The First Punic War was mostly a naval war. Rome had to build up a navy, as I draw a boat, because I think boats are fun to draw. And there was a conflict, and the Romans acquired the island of Sicily in the center of the Mediterranean Sea. This war lasted 3 years. The biggest war, though, happened during the Second Punic War, when we had a Carthaginian general named Hannibal who decided to invade and attack Rome. But he invaded and attacked Rome by marching here over the Italian Alps, the Dolomites, which are a section of the Italian Alps. No one was expecting that. Hannibal took like elephants and horses and thousands of men over the Alps. Many didn't make it. Elephants were falling off the sides of mountains, but then the Romans were so surprised. And Hannibal, for 10 years, plundered the Roman countryside, famously defeated a huge army at the Battle of Cana, in which like 60,000 soldiers were surrounded and defeated. Rome nearly collapsed, but eventually a dictator who was appointed, Scipio Africanus, decided to sail from the Italian countryside back to Zama, right outside of Carthage. I really hope that noise isn't too loud because I needed this video. And then forced Hannibal to come back. And then eventually Scipio defeated Hannibal at the Battle of Zama. This war lasted for 16 years. Both sides were exhausted after the conflict. And by the time of the Third Punic War, Macedonia, who had allied with the Carthaginians, they were conquered by the Romans, and Carthage was literally wiped off the face of the earth. So after the Punic Wars, Rome becomes an empire that has control over all of this territory. If we fast forward then 50 years, we have the rise of Julius Caesar, who's going to be most famous for his conquests in Gaul against many of the Celtic, or many of the tribes living in what is now France, from 58 to 51 BCE. Many impressive victories, many accounts of massacres. So it's important that we remember that about Julius Caesar. When we want to write the history of Caesar, Caesar wrote a lot about what he did, but Caesar was very much so obsessed with like ensuring his legacy, and he wanted people to know how great he was. So oftentimes he would kind of fabricate many of his accounts. So he would say, "Oh, I defeated an army of 40,000," when really it was just an army of like 10,000. So that's something historians have to sort through when writing the history of Julius Caesar. Caesar in 49 BC defies the wishes of the Senate and Pompey. Caesar was ordered to relinquish his power, and he refused. And then one of his friends, Pompey, his rival, came out, and Caesar defeated him. And what Caesar then did was he actually crossed a river in Rome known as the Rubicon, and then basically launched Rome into a civil war. This action means that Caesar denied the Senate's wish. Sometimes if someone says, "I'm crossing the Rubicon," it means they have made a major decision with huge implications. Just like when Caesar crossed the Rubicon, that was a huge thing. I wonder if the Jeep Rubicon has something to do with that then too. Caesar refused to give back his imperium, what the Romans referred to as power, and it was becoming clear that Caesar was gaining a little bit too much power. He did make a lot of reforms in the government, Some people say it was good. Some say it wasn't. It's kind of complicated. But then by 44 BCE, he was famously assassinated, with maybe his last famous lines being "Et tu, Brute," meaning "and you, Brutus, my friend." And this launched Rome into another civil war in which Octavian Augustus, Caesar's adopted son, will eventually become ruler, and he will become an emperor. Thus, the Roman Republic, even though Rome didn't collapse, the Republic was all but gone, which reflects one last theme. Republics and democracies are only as stable as the people who serve within them. The role of Caesar and the role of Augustus, that is a lesson, I think, for democracy and republics today. Okay, hopefully that's just maybe slightly over 10 minutes.